A good day, everyone, and welcome into the It's Official podcast. He's Jeff Siegel. I'm Jeremy Plonk, representing First Bet and Express Bet. Folks, do we have the video for you on this show? 10 different races we're going to recap as part of our 5 hot topics in horse racing. And Jeff, there's a lot of Breeders' Cup influence in what we're going to look back on. And this weekend, we've got a lot of great racing around North America as well. It's King's Plate Day Saturday at Woodbine. We've got the Del Mar Oaks in your backyard in Southern California. And at Saratoga, it's the Alabama Torpedo Anna, or not. It's not, because she's going in the Travers. But we've got grade 1 3-year-old fillies this weekend as well. We got a lot to get to.
Yeah, typical of this time of the year, with some key races around the country that all feed into whether or not the winners or even the horses that run well are Breeders' Cup type horses. We have to evaluate that. It's getting late in the year for 3-year-olds now. There's a couple of obviously huge races still ahead, at least purse money wise, Travers, Pennsylvania Derby. So they'll stay put. But now it's time to step out, especially the grass horses. It's time to stretch out and try to see where you belong. And a horse like, for example, some of these 3-year-olds that we've been seeing right now, Carl Spackler, who we'll look at in a second. He's a 4-year-old, kind of a horse that was on the fence, I thought. I think now you might have to give him a real decent kind of look if he continues to progress. There's a few other races we'll talk about. And, of course, loaded with 2-year-olds. There are some really good 2-year-olds out there, Jeremy, and they were on display last weekend.
Last weekend, the big venues, of course, Saratoga, Del Mar, and Colonial Downs, as they had the big Arlington Million delayed card till Sunday, put some impactful races there. So let's get to our topics. First of 5 on the big board this week. We're going to try to sort out the male turf scene. We had quite a few races last week in the turf division for the males, different ages, different distances, but let's start off with the turf milers and the grade 1 4-star Dave. The aforementioned Carl Spackler, he was all right for Caddyshack fans.
Here comes Carl Spackler on the outside as they reach the top of the stretch. Strong quality. Carl Spackler breezes on by. Ottoman Fleet with plenty of work to do, and More Than Looks is revving up in the center, but Carl Spackler has opened up. What a tremendous athlete Carl Spackler is as he dominates the FanDuel 4-star Dave.
Easy win on the end. He showed a turn of foot, Jeff. I didn't think that he had in his previous races. I didn't see the get up and go in him that he displayed there. He's now won 5 of his last 6, and this might have been the best of them.
Not only that, but he earned a career top 104 Beyer number, despite the fact that the pace was really slow, which usually prevents a fast final time. But this colt, he really accelerated, and the course was not actually firm. It could have been even faster. But he showed good tactical speed. I was like you. I didn't know whether he could blast like that, even if they went slow. Turf milers, if you want to be top class, you have to have that blazingly late kick. 11-3 for the last 8th, 23-1 for the last quarter of a mile. So he did kick home. But the thing is, they did go so slow that he was able to utilize his good tactical speed and then quicken. He's definitely, based on numbers now, right up there with the older horses. I don't know if he's quite as good as Johannes right now. He's just the same type of horse, though. They stalk, pounce, and blast home. They're both got terrific records on grass. They'll probably meet on Breeders' Cup Day. I want to give props to More Than Looks, though, as well. Yeah. He was 6th, but beaten only 2 lengths as a 3-year-old in last year's Breeders' Cup Mile. This was his first start since then. He had absolutely no chance coming from last, but he just flew home. And with any kind of luck next time, I think he'll step forward. But if he gets some help up front, he's right there, I think, as well. So Carl Spackler and More Than Looks have legitimate goals now towards the end of the year in the older turf mile division, both outstanding. And there'll be others in there as well. But those two are definitely on the road to Del Mar.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's the last we see of Carl Spackler before Del Mar, but I would think More Than Looks is a horse who looks 3-5 right now in the Shadwell Mile at Keeneland in the fall for Cherie DeVoe. That looks like a great comeback spot for him next time out. Now, Ottoman Fleet, just a Group 3 winner in Newmarket. He was the horse who had the lead as the favorite in this race and got worn down. So this wasn't the strongest field for a Group 1, a Grade 1 race. And, of course, the scratch of Master of the Seas, who would have been heavily favored in this race, watered it down a little bit. They'll have to run better against better competition, but like you said, Carl Spackler's going the right direction on figures. He matches up with probably anybody domestically here in the States. And as you mentioned, Johannes on the West Coast will have that home field edge at Del Mar, as good as he's looked in recent starts. That's our first of our sorting out the turf division for the males last week. That was the 4-star Dave. Now let's go to the Arlington Million, where Nation's Pride got the victory. Charlie Appleby's got a heck of a run going here in the States. He had measured time winner in the Manhattan. He had Silver Knot win the race at Saratoga last time out in the Men of War. And now he's got an Arlington Million victory with a horse who couldn't beat either of those two. It was Nation's Pride with one of his best races of the year.
A quarter mile left and $1 million on the line. Segoy's lead, though, it's down to 4. Talk of the Nation, Nation's Pride, they're closing in. Integration going to take the outside route. Segoy has been collared. Talk of the Nation between horses. Nation's Pride trying to go with that one. Just in behind Ancient Rome's putting in a good bid, and down the outside Integration. A final furlong left to go. Nation's Pride hits the lead. Nation's Pride the leader. Ancient Rome going to try to come through on the inside of Integration, but Nation's Pride in front with 50 yards to go. Nation's Pride going to win the Arlington Million by 2. Integration looking to get second.
At 1.25 miles, his best look was at the end of that race on the back end, Jeff. Of course, they would stretch out to 1.5 miles in the Breeders' Cup Turf, a race last year where Nation's Pride ran a respectable 5th last year in the Breeders' Cup Turf as a 3-year-old. So he's got a little more seasoning, a little more experience. He's not the best in his own barn, but maybe he's heading the right direction now.
This was impressive to me. You got to remember that he was actually the favorite in the Breeders' Cup Turf at Keeneland back in 22. So he was good then. He won a grade 1 in Germany last year, so he was pretty good then as well. Won the Canadian International. So on his best day, which we did not see in the Manhattan or the Man Award this year, but he had a gradually improving pattern, and now he's back to his best. I thought that was an outstanding race. Also, maybe, I hate to say that a horse improves without Frankie Dettori on him, but back with William Buick, who got the most run out of him. This was the Nation's Pride that we were expecting to see back a couple of years ago. And I think that I don't think he needs another run. I think he can run well fresh now. This was his 3rd race this year. So he was good. He was good. I mean, he's right there, where they want him to be. And now at these, it looks like he's won 10 out of 18. He knows where the wire is. So I was impressed with that. And I think we've got a legitimate major player in the Breeders' Cup Turf again this year.
Nation's Pride towards the Breeders' Cup Turf. We already saw Carl Spackler for the Breeders' Cup Mile. Now we've got one of those tweeners. We're talking about a 3-year-old here in Trickery, who won the Secretariat at Arlington for trainer Graham Motion. This was a race where he turned back and got his first success at 1 mile or less. He's probably not a 1.5 mile horse, especially as a 3-year-old. So let's take a look back to the Secretariat last week with Jason Beam's call and try to see if Trickery fits in the Breeders' Cup discussion or maybe somewhere else.
General Ledger brings him to the top of the stretch. It's General Ledger. Ortiz just took a look over his shoulder. General Ledger still there. Now here comes Trickery on the outside with a quick move. Brilliant Birdie right down the center. The favorite's 1-2 now with a furlong left to go. Trickery got first jump on Brilliant Birdie. 16th a mile left. Trickery in front by 2.5. Brilliant Birdie is second. Trickery, big, powerful turn of foot to win the Secretariat. John Velasquez and Trickery 2.5. Brilliant Birdie was second, into Jam third. Photo fourth. General Ledger or Mattingly.
Good stretch out at the end. You have to like the way he was finishing on the back end. He's probably like about 1.1 miles as his absolute best trip. So that was turning back to the mile there. What do you make of Trickery? Could we see him in the Breeders' Cup or maybe somewhere else?
So you say that his best trip might be 1.1 miles or right in there? Okay. Yeah. With a race called the Twilight Derby at 1.1 miles for 3-year-olds only on Breeders' Cup week, I think that's where he belongs, Yeah. I mean, he could run the best race of his life by 3 or 4 lengths and not hit the board in Breeders' Cup Mile based on what the older horses are carrying. The 96 Beyer number is telling you that's where he should go. And I think that's probably where he'll go. I mean, Graham Ocean's fairly level-headed, and he's not going to try to do something, do stupid things just to be in the show, so to speak. But if he can keep this horse winning and continue to have that gradual improvement, he's going to have a really good high-class 4-year-old next year, maybe a horse that's good enough at that stage to run in the Pegasus turf.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, rather than, try something that's out of his range, keep him in races where he can continue to win and then mature. He's by Oscar performance. He should get better with age and maybe run a little farther then than he is now. I like him. I mean, nice mover, good stride, economical stride, good athlete, good run, good turn of foot, and versatile. Keep him where he belongs, and then you can get it creative next year.
We do have a format, and we kind of know where we're going with this show, but I hadn't thought at all, and we didn't discuss this, about the Twilight Derby, and I think that's a really great spot for him. We've seen motion come west with horses for turf stakes in Southern California. That's not odd. The one thing I was thinking, maybe they'd bring this horse out to California, Trickery, because he's owned by Ammerman Racing, of course, and Ammerman's based in Southern California, and I thought maybe their urge to run in the Breeders' Cup might be something where they take a big bite off the apple, but forgetting the fact that there was the Twilight Derby as part of that Breeders' Cup weekend undercard situation. That makes perfect sense now. The Ammermans could get to see their horse run in Southern California. He's placed in the right spot. Motion runs in races like this in Southern California, and they avoid that in-between distance and major rise in class and try to take on Breeders' Cup level competition. So let's mark it down right now. Get your early bird wagers in on Trickery for the Twilight Derby on Breeders' Cup weekend. That's a look at our first topic this week, the males on the turf. Let's go to our second topic this week, and we're just going to change things up a little bit, but we're going to stay on the green. We're going to try to evaluate how the fillies look going after last weekend's racing. We got a little clearer view of what the grass fillies in America shake out as. Of course, in the division, we've had horses like White Beam for Chad Brown and Chili Flag on the East Coast, Nacho Correas out of Kentucky with Didia, but we had two that kind of from the West and the East have shown they may have something to say in the Breeders' Cup filly and mare turf division. Let's start with last week's Beverly D at Colonial Downs, where it was Moira, former Canadian champion, running down the defending champ in this race, Fed Rover in the stretch run of the week.
But now Moira starts to stoke the fires, is warming up on the outside. Nadette, meanwhile, is taking the shortest way home, is in behind horses third. Nisi Marie is under a drive in Libin. Fev Rover brings him to the top of the stretch in the Beverly D, but company is coming. Here's Moira on the outside trying to charge after Fev Rover. Nadette going to swing toward the center of the course for the final furlong. Fev Rover on the inside of Moira. They're racing well apart. Nadette going to try to split the two of them. Moira on the outside, Fev Rover on the inside. These two for a final 16th of a mile. Fev Rover and Moira. Nadette back in third. It's Moira and Fev Rover. Moira just in front. Moira, I think she got it. Fev Rover was right there in the photo.
And indeed she did. Moira, millionaire earner from Canada. She came south. She scratched out of the race on Saturday, the Canadian Stakes, for $200,000 to run Sunday for $500,000 and took the long van ride from Toronto south. I thought that was a good handicapping sign, but I got to say, in hindsight, Jeff, I thought she'd get the Fev Rover a little easier in this spot. She's a quality opposition. Of course, Fev Rover, the Beverly D winner a year ago, as we mentioned, but I wanted to see Moira kind of put her away a bit more. She was all out to get there.
Yeah, but Fev Rover got the easiest silver platter type of trip. Lone speed, 49, 112 and change.
Yeah.
And Fev Rover, you give her that kind of trip, she's going to be awfully tough to catch. I was actually impressed that Moira actually came and got her. Moira was three wide without cover every step of the way and still was able to quicken late and wear down a very good Fev Rover. She's good no matter what, but when you hand her a front-running lone elf trip like that, she's not going to lose too often. So I'll give Moira credit.
All right.
Queen's Plate winner as a 3-year-old going a mile and a quarter. So, I mean, there are the distances. This was a mile and a 3/16, but she might go farther if you ask her. I mean, we know she probably can. I don't know whether she can go out and beat the best of the Euros. I doubt it, but she's usually when she tries the world-class opposition, she's usually good for finishing fourth or fifth or something like that. I don't know if she's good enough to win, but you never know. In her form, you might as well take another chance.
She was fifth in the filly and mare turf 2 years ago. That's Moira when she was a 3-year-old. She was third last year in the filly and mare turf at before. So she's in that mix. Trainer Kevin Attard said they're going to go back to the exact same prep path. The EP Taylor, which is in September at Woodbine on the Woodbine Mile Undercard. That's going to be the prep race. So they will run in the EP Taylor at home at Woodbine and then head west. That's the same prep she used the last 2 years before heading to the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. Now, we know she would definitely be in the Filly and Mare Turf. Will Anisette be there as well? She's the star of the West Coast Filly and Mare Turf scene. She won again. She's now 7 wins, 3 seconds from 11 lifetime starts, 10 in a row in the Exacta. And Anisette was a rallying winner of the Yellow Ribbon Stakes this past weekend at Del Mar, home of this year's Filly and Mare Turf.
Set is only 3 off the lead, and then Lucky Girl. Top of the lane, Ever Smart gives way. Ballabell, the new leader. Ballabell to Fuente over Huna. In behind that comes Uncorked. And let's see, Anisette now been asked to come after them just behind the leaders. Looking for a spot. Anisette's got a beautiful break. And Anisette now comes after them. Uncorked on the inside, battling to hold on. Uncorked, Anisette. Anisette is just plain scintillating. Anisette has won the yellow ribbon. It's very close for second. Uncorked on the inside, then for...
So, Jeff, Anisette, we know she loves Del Mar. 3 for 3 over that course. We know the big race is there, but it's at 11 furlongs, the Filly and Mare Turf. How much farther do you trust her against top-class company? You certainly have to respect everything you see on paper.
Now, I think she'll actually be a mini marathoner. I think she'll run as well, if not better, at that distance. She relaxes and switches off so nicely. She still has that good kick. Then here's the concern that I have. For example, I'll compare it with Moira, who earned a 98 Beyer number in her win in Colonial. Anisette earned a 90 Beyer here. But the problem is that's what she's proven to be. I mean, it's not like she ran slow because the pace was slow. Here are her recent Beyer numbers dating back to the Del Mar Oaks from last year, in which she earned a 91 Beyer. Since then, she's earned another 91, an 89, a 90, a 91, and this race was a 90.
Right.
So I'll give her credit for consistency. I will certainly give her credit for being able to lay her body down every time she's led over. She will give it everything she's got. Now I have to say, okay, that's great, but can she beat a really high-class Euro? And in this way, she beat 2 fillies who finished in a dead heat, both of whom are barely grade 3 horses. One of them never even placed in it. So she didn't beat anything. She got a perfect trip, not a straw in her path, normal pace. She ran hard. She was fully extended. And that's great, but those horses would be 200 to 1 in the Breeders' Cup. So I don't know. I don't know whether I would do. I guess you got to try her. I mean, you've won a couple of grade 1s already. Her reputation isn't going to get tarnished if she doesn't win. And the purse is great. So she'll be in there, but she's going to have to step up her game. However, there is hope because I do think she will be a better 3-turn horse, a 2-turn horse, and she'll have that chance in the Breeders' Cup this year.
And she'll have that home field advantage, right? 3 for 3 at Del Mar. Not just 3 for 3 at Del Mar, but those wins are the San Clemente, the Del Mar Oaks, and the Yellow Ribbon. I mean, when you talk about local resumes, that's as good as it gets for a filly mare on the turf in Southern California. I went back and looked, I thought this sounds kind of impressive. How often has it been done? She's the only filly ever to win all 3 of those races. The San Clemente, the Del Mar Oaks, and the Yellow Ribbon. Only 3 horses have ever won the Del Mar Oaks at 3 and then later won the Yellow Ribbon. So it's impressive. The numbers look good. Like we said, 11 starts, 7 wins, 3 seconds. She was 4th in her career debut, so her last 10 starts have all been in the Exacta. She just doesn't run that fast. Does she run into the level of the competition, or is she finding easy competition? That's what we're going to find out at the Breeders' Cup, right? Does she rise up and run to the level of the competition, or will she run another 91, 90 Beyer that are just painted in her past performances, it seemingly appears to be? And if she runs a 90 or 91 in the Breeders' Cup, she'll get beat 8 lengths, right? I mean, it's just not going to be nearly good enough. So we'll find out with Anisette, but man, you'd love to own her. You love rooting for her. She's tough to bet on, at 2 to 5. She's looking for some competition. Will she run again before the Breeders' Cup? I would say if you're going 11 furlongs, I would just lay up at this point, and try to train her. Yeah.
She won't run because, after she won the American Oaks, they put her away. Just that was the plan, and she came back at better than she left. So she's not the kind of horse you need to race into shape. There's not much to her to begin with, you know.
Right.
And so, what are you going to work? What are you going to try to hone on? You know, Leonard Powell is a very good trainer, and he will have her ready for the race of her life on Breeders' Cup Day, and then we'll find out whether, as you put it, whether she is running down to the level of the competition, or she is just compiled a bunch of wins because she's beating, good allowance horses. I don't know, but it's going to be a really interesting test to see which way she can go.
If you're a fan of Moira or a fan of Anisette, you're probably going to get your price on Breeders' Cup Day either way, because, there will be a heavy influence of the Chad Brown horses. There'll be a heavy influence of the Europeans on the tote board. You're going to get an elevated price on those two probably if you have faith in them. We've got plenty of time to evaluate how they'll stack up once we see who may be in those fields. Let's go to our third topic this week. We leave the turf and go to the 2-year-olds now. We've got 3 juvenile races to look at and one in the juvenile fillies ranks. We'll go from California to New York to Kentucky with the 2-year-old colts, and then we'll go back to California for the fillies. We track the juveniles first with Getaway Car, winner of the Best Pal at Del Mar for Bob Baffert.
And Getaway Car striding away now, leads it by 3 lengths. Mischief River is in second. White Sand starting a late run on the outside. Heads a turn for home, and Getaway Car goes on with it, being confidently ridden. Leads it by 3 lengths now. Mischief River is next, and then White Sands. But it's all Getaway Car as they come to the line. Getaway Car looked like an exercise gallop today. Handridden by Juan Hernandez. Wins the Best Pal. Getaway Car in front. Mischief River second. Then White Sands and Tis Happy.
I like to talk about the history of these races, Jeff, and how many times a horse has done this or done that. There's not a lot of times you say that's the 11th time a trainer has won a particular stakes. I mean, Baffert has won the Best Pal 11 times now with that victory. Even for all of his excesses and the amazing records that he has, 11 times in a stakes just shows his complete dominance of a 2-year-old stakes division from Del Mar to Santa Anita and, of course, into the 3-year-old prep races. When we talk Getaway Car, are we talking good 2-year-old, or are we going to be talking about him when we get to those 3-year-old prep races?
No, I think you will. I mean, he's a beautiful mover, floats over the ground. He's by Curlin. He should run farther out of a top race sprinting mare that should get a horse based on pedigree that will go a mile. I don't think that'll be any issue. Quick out of the gate, good athlete, switches off, looks like he's run 100 times. He's so smart, and then kicks away and is not, trust me when I say this, he's not used 50% of his natural talent. He hasn't had to. He was coasting home in his first start, coasting home here. He earned an 85 buyer number. He produced the forward move that I was looking for from the 79 that he earned in his maiden win, and both races were a half speed for him. So when he's turned loose, and I don't know when that's going to happen because I don't see anybody around here beating him in the Del Mar Futurity, unless it's another Baffert, but he's the best of the bunch so far. At least I think he is. You never know. We've got probably a half a dozen that we haven't seen yet. But the way he won this race, this was for real. This is a really, really good colt, and he'll probably run, as I mentioned, at the end of the year on the Del Mar Futurity, at the end of the meeting, and then probably just train up. First time around 2 turns will be the Breeders' Cup, I think, and that's a great angle for me. Right. And man, I think he's not only good this year, I think he'll be good next year too.
On the West Coast, if you're going to get stakes experience going around 2 turns, the American Pharaoh at Santa Anita would be run there end of September, first week of October during their preps towards the Breeders' Cup. So that's the option to go around 2 turns. If you stay at Del Mar, go to the Del Mar Futurity, 7 furlongs. You won't get a 2-turn race prior to the Breeders' Cup. Okay, from Del Mar to Saratoga, we'll talk some more 2-year-olds. It was the Saratoga Special over the past weekend, and the winner was Showcase for Top Legend.
There at the top of the stretch, and First Resort cuts the corner and goes for home. On the inside, Showcase is awaiting Racing Room, trying to get out of there. On the center of the racetrack is Touchy. They're inside the 8th pole, and Showcase gets out for a crack at First Resort. First Resort, Showcase lengthens his stride. And how much the best was Showcase. He's got the look and the ability. He bounds home with plenty.
Sharp sprint winner there. Showcase. How far will he go? We'll find out. Did some notes on him. The dam buy, sell, hold. She was 2 for 2 to start her career and then never won again. So this might be a horse who's got a win early pedigree. We'll see, because she won a Keeneland in the Baby Dash in the spring, then won the Kentucky Juvenile at Churchill and Stakes Company, and again, never won another race. This is a half the Bourbon Bash. It was a good sprinter. This horse looks like he wants to run more at the back end of this race, Jeff, but I'm a little worried about a horse who maybe win early and distance challenge long term. But where do you rank Showcase right now as you take a look at some of these 2-year-olds?
Well, what I liked about that race, he only got a 79 buyer, but it still represented a rather significant step up. And he had a bad trip. I mean, he got 3 races worth of experience here. Buried on the rail, nowhere to go, boxed into the top of the stretch, bumped, had to bull his way out for room, and then quickened nicely. I mean, he finished out really nicely for a horse that was just making a second career start. It's by Uncle Mo. I mean, and that's funny because in looking at his form, and I say this he only brought $300,000 as a yearling. And if you're a really good-looking Uncle Mo, you're going to bring more than that. I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but that's a credit to Uncle Mo. They come in all shapes and sizes. But he showed good athleticism. I think assuming they're going to run him back in the 2-year-old race at the end of the year, the hopeful, and then that's never been a great race for producing classic horses, but it's still a nice race to win as a 2-year-old. Right. And then we'll see what they do with him after that. I like him. I do. And I think he will route. I'm not saying he's a mile and a quarter or anything like that, but I think he will. I think he'll go middle distance. And again, it's one thing to win a race, both of his races, like Getaway Car has done, when he doesn't do anything. He gets to the front, just fools around. This colt had to overcome a tougher trip. You definitely have to consider that he's better than the number shows, and I think he's a comer. And I think Todd, I think he's going to do right by him. Whatever he wants to do will be fine.
You look at the Naira 2-year-olds like Showcase, their next steps. You mentioned the hopeful at 7 furlongs there, Labor Day at Saratoga. Then the Champagne at Belmont, still, or Aqueduct now, but typically at Belmont. But at the Belmont at Aqueduct meet would be a 1-turn mile. So your New York horses do not get to go 2 turns prior to the Breeders' Cup. If you're on the East Coast and you want to get a 2-turn race into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, a lot of times those horses will head to Keeneland for the Breeders' Futurity at a mile and a 16th, or maybe to Churchill where they run a mile and a 16th race during that September meet, the Iroquois, I believe it is. You could get a 2-turn race with something like that. But I get a feeling with this horse Showcase, you would kind of go hopeful Champagne with him, keep him around 1 turn because he's, I think he's going to be good, like up to a mile, like you're saying there, and then see where you fall after that. But I don't think you need to find that out in the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland. Find that out at the Breeders' Cup for $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. That's Showcase from Saratoga, winning the Saratoga Special. Now, also last weekend in the 2-year-old colt division, they had the Ellis Park Juvenile, and Brad Cox has got one here named Owen Almighty, who you might want to keep an eye on. Let's take a look at his victory. Tony Kalo with the call.
And Owen Almighty pokes his nose in front, but Politically Correct is far from finished, and he's battling bravely. And 3 Echoes is third. After that, Charbonnet, a furlong to travel. Here's the race we've been waiting for. It's been developing for quite some time, and now Owen Almighty is getting the better of Politically Correct. Owen Almighty, superior in the Ellis Park Juvenile.
I think I said Brad Cox. It's Brian Lynch. Oh, apologies there. Brian Lynch, the trainer of Owen Almighty. And this was a really good performance, I thought. I feel good about this one. I like this one better than the Saratoga winner. And this is a horse who's got pedigree to go longer. His dam, Temper's Rising, 2nd in the Fairgrounds Oaks, 4th in the Kentucky Oaks. I think this one could get a little bit of distance. I'm kind of excited about Owen Almighty, and he feels like a Breeders' Futurity horse for Keeneland. Of course, Brian Lynch is going to be supporting that meet, and this horse you figure stays in Kentucky.
Yeah, he ran 103 flat when he broke his maiden at Churchill, comes here, gets bet off the board, even though politically Correct is a good colt. He was strong second choice. And Owen Almighty just kind of stalked him on the outside and pinned him to the fence and drew off with authority. 83 buyer number is very legitimate for this time of the year for a 2-year-old. He's by Spites down, so while he should be fast, he should get a middle distance. Most of the really good Spites downs do. And what I liked about Owen Almighty is that he, again, ran like a professional horse, like a colt that had run a lot of times, even though he only had one previous start. Switched off very nicely, went after a good colt and drew off and won with authority, going 7/8 of a mile. The final time was only 1:24.1, but it was a dead racetrack that day. So that was actually a very good, fast race for a 2-year-old. And I think what you just pointed out, the game plan for him is going to be what you just said it was. I think Keeneland would be great for him. And then we'll go from there. But this is a good colt. He's a good colt. And based on his pedigree, he could be better than just good down the road.
You mentioned about Showcase being a $300,000 yearling by Uncle Mo and that kind of being interesting. They usually sell for more than that. When I looked up the purchase history on Owen Almighty, this horse bought $360,000 as a weanling. Weanling. That's a big sales number. So I think he might be put together pretty well, and he looked good on the racetrack. So the way he finished up there. Owen Almighty, one to keep an eye on out of Ellis Park, winning the Juvenile for Brian Lynch. Now we've got one 2-year-old filly to talk about, and we're back to Team Baffert here. It's Del Mar. It was the prep for the Del Mar debutante this past weekend, and she was awfully good. Her name is Noonie. She had a stablemate in this race to beat, and she not only beat her pretty easily, she handled the rest of them really without taking a deep breath.
Leading it by half a length. Casalou's been there throughout. On the outside, Vodka with a twist, running a big one. And Vodka with a twist is coming to take them on. Even Night Beacon running courageously. They come for home. Nooney's finding more. Vodka with a twist down the center. Nooney on the inside. Vodka with a twist. Just can't get to her. Nooney gonna go all the way. And Nooney and Juan Hernandez have won the Sorrento. Vodka with a twist, a very brave second. Then came Casalou and Night Beacon.
Jeff, she was up against an already stakes winner in Vodka with the twist, so it was a proving ground for her, and I thought she responded. I said she didn't take a deep breath. She did feel the whip twice, maybe a third stick about the 8th pole. She responded well to that, so it was a little bit more than not taking a deep breath, some exaggeration at that point, but she repelled a good challenge there and looked good here in this sprint race.
And she earned a legitimate number, 81 buyer, and she did it after shaking off Casalou, her stablemate, who broke her maiden last month at Del Mar by more than 5, and she was kind of all the rage as well. But I thought this was interesting because you have Nooney, who cost $1.8 million in the 2-year-old in training sale in March, beating Vodka with a twist, who last October at Face tipped and brought $2,500. So, I mean,
you're in the plus with Vodka with a twist.
Yeah, I think you're out on Vodka with a twist. They still have a ways to go with Nooney to get that 1.8 million, but she is a grade 2 winner now, so that's something that or grade 3 winner. That's something that's always going to appear on the catalog page. So she's not out, but she's the residual value is important there. And from the first crop of win-win-win. So I like the way Nooney won. She'll again. Logically, you would think that she would come back in the Del Mar debutante, and I think that's probably what she'd be. I don't know how far she's going to run, but she's a very good athlete. Again, a good mover, definitely bred to go a mile at least out of a Union Rags mare. So that's good. Vodka with a twist had won the debutante at Churchill Downs. The filly that she beat in that race came back and broke her maiden over the weekend at Del Mar. So the form is holding, and she ran really well. So I have nothing but good things to say about Nooney. I expect her to win her next start unless there's something laying in the weeds that I don't know about. And then we'll find out, probably after that, how far she'll run. I doubt she'd run again. So she'll be probably stretching out for 2 turns, two turns in the Breeders' Cup for the first time. And I don't see any reason why she wouldn't go a mile and 16. She's good.
Yeah, I think she's got the pedigree to go that far. Win-win-win was second in the Bluegrass. It became a really good sprinter miler, but, as a 3-year-old, he was second in a grade 1 mile and an 8th race. And this is the female family, includes Pretty Discreet, who won the grade 1 Alabama, as route gets in the 3-year-old filly division. So this is a good female family. She's a classy individual. If they want to try her long, they could go to the Chandelier at Santa Anita and get 2 turns before the Breeders' Cup. I think probably a lot depends on what Baffert has for the Del Mar debutante. who they want to get black type to, and how they want to advance their cause of multiple top 2-year-old fillies probably by then. And certainly by the time the Chandelier rolls around, they'll have some options to play from that barn in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies division. But certainly one of the leaders, if not the leader in the 2-year-old filly division right now, given the West Coast experience, and now a stakes winner of the Sorrento, that being Nooney. Let's talk another filly, sprinter, but on the turf as our star of tomorrow. This is a 3-year-old filly. Our Stars of Tomorrow segment wraps up each week on It's Official. And we've got a filly who had a lot of hype behind her because she was the daughter of Constitution and the champion 3-year-old filly Covfefe, Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint winner. This is the Brad Cox trainee. I spoke ahead too soon on a segment or two ago. She broke her maiden over the course and distance at Ellis Park a couple weeks back, a month or so back. And then in Allowance Company this past weekend, she really showed that she's one to watch on the grass.
As they race to that quarter pole, and it is L&J with the lead. L&J has the lead. And from the outside, Huntress for Hire. She continues to close after L&J. L&J's the leader off the turn. Huntress for Hire makes a move for second, currently held by Foolish. From the inside is Bella Hayes. After that is Copperum. But L&J is really rolling this afternoon. Look at her open up a big, good-looking victory from L&J. Huntress for Hire checks in second.
When they say a horse levels off, that's what it's looking like. You get down, you're stretching out, and really leveled off nicely. This was a professional win here for this filly. What do you make of her, Jeff, and where might she go, and what kind of races are we looking at? Is she a turf sprinter?
As of now, she is, but there's no reason why she won't run on the dirt. You remember what her mother did on Preakness Day, or maybe it was the Oaks Day. I can't remember which day it was. It was either the Black-Eyed Susan or the Preakness, the year that she ran, fractured the track record by more than a second.
Yeah, the Miss Preakness, the undercard.
By Constitution, out of Covfefe, and this is a filly that had run. Now that she's run 4 times, that was her 4th start. First 2 races, she actually managed to get herself beat. I don't know how that happened. And then her last start, she did break her maiden over the same course and distance, 5 furlongs on turf at Ellis Park. But she was life and death to win that one. And I thought this was a kind of a race that, I mean, we were going to find out which way she was going to go.
Right.
I mean, she was just 2-1 in the race. I mean, she was favored, but she wasn't like a slam dunk, can't lose type of horse. But I can tell you this race left that previous form so far behind. She was so much better in this race than she had done in anything in her previous 3. Now, she's a 3-year-old filly, so it took her a while to get to the races. But now that she broke her maiden in this race by almost 6 lengths and ran, I know the course is like running on a trampoline there on that grass course. It's very fast, but 1 minute and 3/5, you can't run much faster than that. I don't care I don't care if you're going downhill, you know. And so she won that race, drawn away, relaxed beautifully, to a point where I think that if they ever wanted to try her a mile, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for her to do that. I think that looking at her and based on her pedigree, I think Brad Cox is going to let her go through her conditions. Obviously, they'd love to get some black type with her, and I think that'll happen. So how ambitious she's going to get from here on in. She's now second level allowance filly, which she'd have to go that. And usually horses that are running at that division are stakes horses somewhere. So, but I'm going to be following her because, again, the mother was one of my favorites. And this one looks like, and again, another good athlete, beautiful mover. I think that'll carry her a little farther than maybe her pedigree. I think she's got a chance to be really good and a star maybe down the road somewhere, time relatively soon.
That's L&J, like ELLEN, and then JAY, L&J, but it's named for L&J Foxwoods, the owners. And of course, that is Larry, Nancy, and Jamie Roth, the husband, wife, and daughter team of L&J Foxwoods. So L&J, our star of tomorrow, off a big allowance win at Ellis Park over the weekend. Let's go back and review the topics this week on It's Official. As we started out sorting out the male turf scene, Carl Spackler perhaps headed towards the Breeders' Cup Mile after his best performance yet to date in the 4-star Dave. Nation's Pride looked good for Charlie Appleby in winning the Arlington Million. Could get a repeat bid towards the Breeders' Cup turf. And then we talked about Trickery, who could be one to watch for the undercard on Breeders' Cup Day. He won the Secretariat Stakes at Colonial Downs, and that might set him up well for the Twilight Derby for Trainer Graham Motion coming up a little bit later in the fall. We got a clear view of the Grass Fillies with Moira's hard-fought victory over the pace advantage Fev Rover in the Beverly D Stakes. And Anisette, she just continues to rock and roll at Del Mar, becoming the first filly to win the San Clemente, Del Mar Oaks, and Yellow Ribbon in her career. She won that over the weekend, headed towards maybe the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf in a showdown with Moira and others. We tracked the juveniles all around the country. Getaway Car was much the best, and Bob Baffert's 11th victory in the Best Pal Stakes. Showcase got the win for Todd Pletcher. The Big Barns were flexing their muscle. He won the Saratoga Special at the Spa. And it was Owen Almighty for Brian Lynch, who was rather encouraging by the visuals and what he might be in the future, winning the Ellis Park Juvenile. And in Southern California, we went back to Del Mar for Nooney's victory in the Sorrento Stakes, as she stamps herself one of the horses to beat, fillies to beat in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. We've got a fourth topic. I completely blew this topic, so let's treat this like I went from 3 to 5, Jeff, to prove that we record this live. We never talked about our fourth topic, which was Big Purse with points too. There was some other news coming out of the Arlington Million weekend where Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia was on the mic at Colonial Downs announcing that the Virginia Derby was going to move to the spring. It was going to go from a turf race to a dirt race, and Churchill Downs Incorporated, now with its corporate influence at Colonial Downs, will award it 50 points for the winner of the Virginia Derby and make it a points prep towards this year's Triple Crown. Your initial thoughts on the topic I completely blew past.
Well, it's like adding a bowl game. You know what I'm saying? For college football, just make one up and throw it in there somewhere. Find a spot where there's no other TV games. I think that's what they did here. So we've got a bowl game for the 3-year-olds, the Virginia Derby. It's going to be 7 weeks out, kind of a strange place to put a 50-point bowl game prep for the Derby, but it's their track, Churchill's track, so they can do whatever they want. Money's going to be good. They didn't announce how much purse money it'll be, but it's $500,000 this year. I doubt it'll be less. On the dirt next year, not turf, and slotted in. I think you're going to find it well attended. I think it'll draw some decent horses. Maybe some guys taking a chance, figuring I'm not going to win the the other preps races when the big barns go, but maybe I can sneak in, get a piece of it, maybe even win it and get a ticket to the Derby. So mid-March, the Virginia Derby at Colonial. I've never been there. I want to get out there.
I have.
You like it? Is it nice?
Yeah, it is. I did a night school tour event there back, I don't know, for Virginia Derby Day 2014, 2015. Had a nice tent. Nice facility. It looks like a plantation house. The grandstand, really a pretty grounds and a really wide and expansive turf course. A nice place in the greater Richmond area. You got to get out of town a ways. You leave Richmond and you head east, and you're kind of going out there 20, 30 miles wondering, are we there yet? But it is a nice track. I enjoyed my time there at Colonial. I think one of the interesting things about this is the 7-week out mark, right? But it does fill a gap, which March 15th is where the 2025 calendar falls for that 7-week out gap where this is. There are no other races that weekend. And so it keeps a consistent schedule basically from around the first or second week of February all the way through the second week of April. There's a Derby prep every single week now. There won't be that gap. But the reason there was a gap there is 7 weeks out is a no man's land, right? I mean, it's 3 weeks to that big weekend where it's Bluegrass, Santa Anita, Derby, Wood Memorial. Nobody wants to run back that quick. If you take 4 weeks after the Virginia Derby and you're 7 weeks out, that puts you at the 3-week marker and could get you to the Lexington Stakes if you happen to need more points. But if you have 50 from the Virginia Derby, you're not going to be trying to run for more points in the Lexington Stakes. So it's kind of a weird spot. If you win that, do you just sit back? I mean, we've seen some horses in recent years win the Tampa Bay Derby a week prior, 8 weeks out, and just lay up, right? And just say we're in the Derby and we're going to try to get to the Derby that way. So we'll see what happens with that Virginia Derby. I thought one of the interesting things, the Racing Biz blog pointed this out. I want to give them credit for it, but I thought it was a really good point. If they are to increase the number of horse racing, historical horse racing machines at Colonial Downs, which are the slot machines that are powering all the purses, there's a state law that says you have to have a certain proportion of live racing days for every machine that you have in the building. So they have to add to their meat because they want more slot machines in their casino. That's the reality of it. So you're like, well, why is Colonial Downs adding this? They're adding it to get more slot machines all year round. I believe it's a 4-day racing meet that they're going to look to add in March. The timing of it had to come somewhere. I mean, maybe they would just add 4 days at the end of their meet. So I give them credit that they're being creative in putting it in March and running that short kind of boutique meet. We'll see what kind of horses they get for that Virginia Derby, though, because again, you might be taking some horses away from Turfway, you might be taking some horses away from Fairgrounds and the Louisiana Derby. Both those races are run a week later. There's also horses or racetracks that are owned by Churchill Downs Incorporated, so they might be trading some of their horses around in their preps. But I think overall, for as much flack as Churchill has taken in a lot of corporate areas, and much of it deservedly so, I think the road to the Triple Crown that they have developed over the last 10, 15 years or so has been widely successful. I think we all follow it like they wanted. That was the intent, was to get people talking about the Kentucky Derby in December, from Breeders' Cup on, December, January. And because of the points, they control things, not the purse money like it used to be, where tracks could raise the purse to increase the importance of their race. They've got control of the entire Kentucky Derby, game board, if you will, as we play and move the pieces around the board to the Kentucky Derby. And they're controlling it all the way from the day after the Breeders' Cup, essentially, in my estimation, all the way through the first Saturday in May. And I think they've done a good job with it. So this race may not produce a major Kentucky Derby player, but it's going to fill a spot on the calendar where maybe people weren't talking Kentucky Derby for the week, and now they'll focus on Colonial Downs. I think it's a win-win all the way around, even if the field doesn't come out that great.
I had this thought of them doing it strictly to accommodate Bob Baffert, their newfound buddy, because Bob's got so many.
Bob is eligible to run the Virginia Derby, I guess. Yeah, that is.
Well, he's going to have Derby horses next year, so he might as well send 2 or 3 or 4 out there. His overflow, someone who ran.
Yeah, had to bring Baffert into it.
So anyway, no, I think it's good. Again, adding to the list again, so there are some good run-of-the-mill bowl games that, I watch them all anyway, so right. So I'll watch this one for sure, and it's good.
It'll be somewhere between the Rose Bowl and the Beef O'Brady's Bowl. I'm not sure where it's going to fall, but it'll be somewhere in that spectrum between all the bowl games. I was wondering how we got done so fast, because this podcast always goes 45, 46 minutes, and we're at 45:37 as I look at the clock right now. I blew a topic earlier. That's how we were like, how could we be wrapping this up that fast?
Well, we talked about this before the show, and I think you probably felt we already talked about it.
That might be it. We had a nice discussion about it before we came on
to give you an excuse here. I would have jumped in before I said goodbye. I would have said, "Well, how about a bonus topic?" But I didn't have to do that because you were already there, and I actually did a little bit of preparation for it. So I didn't want all my 5 minutes of research to go to waste. So we got it in. That's the main thing.
March 15th, 2025, 7 weeks out from the Kentucky Derby. It'll be the new Virginia Derby moving to the dirt. That's going to wrap things up for It's Official. Jeff and I aren't done for today. We're going to get together in a little bit, and we're going to handicap the carryover pick 6 tomorrow at Saratoga. Wednesday Saratoga card features $107,000 pick 6 carryover. So we're going to get our handicapping thoughts together on video here in just a bit. You can follow that on social media over the next 24 hours or so until tomorrow's pick 6 gets underway at the Spa. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of It's Official. Jeff and I will be back on Friday for the First Call podcast when we handicap weekend stakes races, where it's Kings Plate, Del Mar Oaks, and Alabama weekend around the country. Have a great day, everybody.